My name is Julia, and I still remember the day I first met Mark back in college. We started out as friends, just study buddies at first, but slowly, things changed. That friendship turned into love before I even realized it. Time would just fly when I was with him. I found myself daydreaming about a future with Mark, a beautiful life together. We'd spend hours on the phone, talking about how it would all look someday. Before we had even finished our degrees, Mark came to my family to officially ask for my hand in marriage. That moment felt like something out of a dream, one of the happiest days of my life. At the time, I was living with my grandpa, my mom, and my sister-in-law. My mom really liked Mark and supported us from the start. But my sister-in-law wasn't happy. She didn't want me marrying someone I chose myself. Thankfully, my grandpa stood beside me like a father. He rested his hand on my head gently and promised to take full responsibility for the wedding. And just like that, he sent me off into a new life, with love and blessings. After we got married, and I walked into Mark's home as his wife, I felt this deep sense of peace. Like my life had finally found its missing piece. His family welcomed me so warmly, like I truly belonged. His mom was incredibly kind to me, and his brothers, both older and younger, were respectful and friendly. Everything felt right. My dream of having a loving home had come true. Not long after our wedding, we found out I was pregnant. It was a blessing. Mark became even more caring. He looked after me constantly, checking on me, helping me with everything. He was always there. Then came the day our son was born, a beautiful little boy. Our home was filled with joy and laughter. That tiny baby, with his little giggles and curious eyes, became the center of our world. And the way Mark looked at him, it melted my heart. 2 years later, our daughter was born. Now we had both a son and a daughter, and our home felt truly complete. We didn't long for anything else, just hoped that Mark's business would keep growing so we could give our children a good life, full of love and opportunity. Mark was always dreaming big. He wanted to give our kids everything, the best of everything. Then came the day he had to leave for New York for work. I tried to be strong, telling myself that it was just a phase, that this ache inside me would pass. I believed that the distance was only temporary. Every evening, I waited for his call like clockwork. Just hearing his voice calmed me. He would always say, "Just hang in there. Soon, we'll be together again, for good." I had made a silent promise to myself. No matter how long it took, I would wait for him. I didn't know that our happy little world would start to crumble so soon. Mark left, and everything changed. At first, we stayed close, long calls, video chats, little jokes with the kids. They'd light up when they heard their dad's voice. Every few weeks, we'd receive packages from him, boxes filled with toys for the kids, clothes, sometimes something pretty for me like a new dress or a bit of makeup. Even the smallest gifts brought us joy. It was his way of reminding us that we were still in his heart, even from far away. He'd always tell me, "This is just the beginning, Julia. Once things are settled here, I'll bring you and the kids to New York. We'll have our own place. Our own home." I believed him. I held on to that dream. Then one afternoon, everything changed. The kids had just finished lunch, and I was getting them ready for their nap. My phone rang. I rushed to pick it up, thinking it might be Mark with some exciting news. But it wasn't him. It was a stranger's voice. Calm, but serious. "Is this Mrs. Julia?" he asked. "Mr. Mark's wife?" "Yes," I said, my heart starting to pound. "I'm really sorry to tell you this," he said, "but your husband has been in an accident." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. My hands were shaking as I held the phone and asked, "What do you mean? What kind of accident? Where is my husband?" There was a long pause on the other end. Then the voice, soft but serious, said, "We're very sorry to tell you, your husband has passed away." Those words hit me like a truck. My entire world just stopped. Everything around me blurred. I leaned against the wall so I wouldn't collapse. My kids were playing nearby, laughing, completely unaware that their whole world had just changed forever. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. When my mother-in-law came into the room, all I could whisper was, "Mark is gone." Then I blacked out. After that, it was like a dark cloud settled over the house. When I finally came to, the house was filled with people. Neighbors, relatives, all gathered in silence. My in-laws sat in the corners of the room, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law crying, my father-in-law and brother-in-law sitting in stunned silence. My kids, still too little to understand, just wandered around, confused but calm. As soon as I realized what had happened, I burst into tears. Some of the women from the neighborhood came to comfort me, but I couldn't really hear their words. Everything felt distant. For days, I was just drifting there, but not really present. 5 days later, we got the call. Mark's body was being brought back from the US. I tried to pull myself together, but inside, I was shaking. I stood at the doorway waiting. The moment the ambulance pulled up, a huge crowd formed around our house. My father-in-law, brother, and brother-in-law carried his body inside. People tried to console me. "Sweetheart, please be strong," they said. But no words could calm the storm inside me. I walked toward the body, and when they pulled back the sheet, I froze. The face I saw didn't even look like him. It was so badly damaged. I couldn't breathe. My heart refused to believe it. That wasn't my Mark. That couldn't be him. Sobbing, I whispered, "Mark, you promised you'd come back. You said you'd take me and the kids with you. And now you've left us, just like that?" I broke down, crying uncontrollably as people tried to pull me away. Then came the day of his funeral. I tried to stay strong one last time, but inside, I was completely shattered. I kept calling his name over and over again, "Please come back, please, just once." But he was gone. And now, no one could hear me anymore. After the funeral, time lost all meaning. Nothing felt real anymore. And soon, I started noticing a change in how my in-laws treated me. At first, they were supportive. They cried with me. But slowly, that changed. The sympathy faded, and blame began to creep in. Suddenly, every little thing was my fault. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law started saying terrible things to me. "This house turned dark the day you came into it," they'd say. "First, your father-in-law got sick, and now you've taken our son too. You're cursed." I stayed silent. Some part of me believed that silence is sometimes more powerful than arguing back. But it wasn't easy. My heart was breaking all over again. The only thing keeping me going was my children. I had to live for them. I had to be strong for them. But every day, the bitterness in that house grew stronger. The insults became more frequent. My mother-in-law kept repeating the same thing, "My son died because of you. If it weren't for your bad luck, he'd still be alive. You ruined everything." I took all their anger quietly. Not because I agreed, but because I didn't have the strength to fight anymore. One day, I just couldn't take it anymore. I looked straight at my mother-in-law and said, "Life and death aren't in my hands. How can you blame me for something I had no control over? I lost him too. He was my husband." She snapped back, "No, all of this happened because of your bad luck. We warned him not to marry you, but he didn't listen. And now we're suffering because of that mistake." I wanted to scream. But instead, I stayed quiet and focused on taking care of my kids. Even getting 2 proper meals a day had become difficult. I wasn't even allowed into the kitchen without judgment. One day, as I brought food for the kids, my sister-in-law sneered, "Look at her, the queen of the house. Your husband is dead, and you still think you have a right to walk into the kitchen? From now on, count every bite your kids eat. This house runs on my husband's paycheck now." I took a deep breath and calmly said, "My husband supported this house too. He sent money home, bought gifts for all of you, including you. I'm not taking food for myself. I'm feeding his children. You used to cry that you couldn't have kids. Don't you feel anything for them now?" She rolled her eyes. "That was then. Things are different now. I don't feel anything for your kids." Her words cut me deeply. I didn't say another word. I quietly took the food, went back to my room, fed the kids, and tucked them in. As they slept, I heard yelling from outside. It was my mother-in-law, her voice echoing through the house. "Nothing's been right since Julia came here. My elder son's business is failing now. First my husband got paralyzed, then my younger son died, and now the business is collapsing. It's all her fault." I stood at my doorway, listening. A part of me wanted to shout back, "None of this is my fault. I loved him. You're only saying this because he's gone and can't defend me anymore." But I stayed quiet. I looked at my children sleeping peacefully, and my heart told me to stay strong. But deep down, I knew I wasn't welcome in that house anymore. My presence had become a burden. Then one day, my mother-in-law crossed the line. I was outside, scrubbing laundry, when she walked up to me and said coldly, "Get up. Take your clothes, take your kids, and leave. I don't want to see you here anymore." Stunned, I asked, "What happened? What did I do wrong?" She replied, "What you've done is ruin our lives. Everyone in the neighborhood is talking. Ever since you stepped into this house, we've had nothing but bad luck. Before you, there was peace. Since your husband died, we finally see it. You are the reason for all our suffering." I shut my eyes tightly, trying to keep it together. I could feel the words forming on my lips, but I swallowed them. My tears spilled over as I looked at my kids. They came running to me, hugging my legs. My little boy looked up and asked, "Mom, are we leaving?" "Grandma said we can't stay." Before I could respond, she barked again, "Go wherever you want, but not here." I took a deep breath, wiped my tears, and bent down to hold my son's face. "Don't worry, sweetheart. God will lead us where we need to go. But we're not staying here anymore." A few days later, she made her final move. I was in the kitchen, washing dishes, when she stormed in and shouted, "Pack your stuff. I've had enough of you. You're not staying here another day." I folded my hands and begged her, "Please, where will I go? I have nowhere else. These kids, they're your son's children too. How can you turn away from them like this?" There wasn't a hint of mercy in her eyes. She stared right at me and said, "Will you walk out on your own, or should I kick you out myself?" I knew exactly why all this was happening. My brother-in-law's business hadn't failed, it was doing just fine. But my sister-in-law couldn't stand that her husband was now the only one supporting the household, and that his income was also helping me and my kids. That jealousy had turned into cruelty. So I didn't argue. I quietly packed a few clothes and my kids' belongings, wrapped them in an old bedsheet, and walked out of the house with my children. Neighbors stood around watching the scene unfold. Some looked on with pity, others with judgment. But not a single person stepped forward to help. I kept my head down. I swallowed my pride, my pain, and every dream I once had as I walked away from the house that had once felt like home. Just as I stepped off the porch, I saw an old homeless woman sitting nearby. I used to give her a few coins whenever I passed her on the street. Today, I had nothing to offer. She looked up at me and said softly, "Child, the world is big. Somewhere, someone will understand you. Don't lose hope. God sees everything." My throat tightened and tears filled my eyes. She, who had so little, gave me more comfort than anyone else. I nodded silently and continued walking through the streets, holding my children close. Misfortune had left me broken, but I made a promise to myself I wouldn't give up. Not for them. My daughter, too small to walk long distances, had fallen asleep on my shoulder. I carried her in my arms while my son walked beside me, dragging his tiny feet, trying so hard to stay strong. We had no direction, just moving forward, step by step. After a while, we sat beneath a tree to rest. But I noticed a few men nearby watching us with the wrong kind of eyes. My heart skipped. I picked up my daughter again and crossed the street with my son. I didn't know where we were going, I just knew I couldn't stop there. The world felt like it was silently pointing fingers at me, as if I had done something wrong. Every face I passed made me feel smaller. Then I saw a little shaded area near someone's front porch and thought maybe I could sit there for a while, give the kids some water. Just as I was about to rest, I saw an elderly woman walking toward me. For a second, my heart leapt with hope. When she got closer, I recognized her. She was a distant relative from my in-laws' side. She looked at my children with a bit of sympathy, gently placing her hand on their heads. But then she said softly, "Sweetheart, I'm sorry. I can't help you. People talk, you know how it is. Please, protect your dignity and leave. No one here is going to give you shelter." I just nodded. At least she had the decency to speak to me kindly. Everyone else looked at me like I was cursed. I kept walking, silently praying, hoping someone, anyone, might open a door for me. Finally, I turned toward the one place I still had a sliver of hope, my childhood home. My maternal home. Maybe my brother and sister-in-law would understand. Maybe they'd take us in. My heart pounded as I reached their big house with the tall gate I had walked through 100 times growing up. But today, it felt unfamiliar. Cold. The security guard stood by the gate. I said, "Please, can you open the gate? I need to speak to my brother." He looked at me with a straight face and replied, "You're not allowed in. I need permission from the madam first." I said, "Please, just tell her that Julia is here. I'm her sister-in-law, your employer's sister." He shook his head. "No need. She already told me not to let you in, no matter what." I begged him, "Please, just ask my brother. Please let me talk to him." After a long pause, he finally agreed and went inside. A few minutes later, he returned. But the words he brought back shattered what little hope I had left. She said, "They don't want to be disturbed. You need to leave." That was it. I stood there, stunned. This was the house I had grown up in. And now, the gate had been shut on me like I never belonged. I sat on the ground near the entrance, my kids curled up next to me. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. I wasn't crying just because the doors were closed. I was crying because it felt like the whole world had closed its heart too. And I didn't know where else to go. After a while, my sister-in-law came out to the gate herself. She looked down at me with that cold voice of hers and said, "Oh, you're still here? I figured you'd be gone by now. What do you want, us to throw you out and humiliate you in front of the neighbors? We already explained everything to your old mother. Now you're here, trying to ruin our peace too? Just go. You don't belong here anymore." I looked at her, my hands folded in front of me, begging, "Please. I'm asking you, just let me stay somewhere, anywhere. I have my kids with me. Where else can I go?" But she just snapped, "If you don't leave, I'll call the guard to throw you out." I held back my tears, trying hard to stay composed. Just then, I heard a faint voice from inside the house, my mother's voice. "Who's at the door, dear?" she called out. And my sister-in-law, without even looking back, shouted, "No one, Mom. Just some beggar woman. Don't worry about it." Then she slammed the door shut. I stood there frozen. I didn't speak. I didn't scream. I just stood there in silence while my kids started crying from hunger. I gently ran my hand through my daughter's hair and whispered, "Stay strong, baby. We'll figure something out." I sat there on the doorstep of the house I once called home, just holding them close. I looked back at the door one last time, tears blurring my vision, and then walked away, carrying my children and nothing else. If your own blood turns their back on you, how can you expect strangers to help? We had no destination. No idea where we were going. Just me and my kids, hand in hand, walking endlessly down streets that didn't feel like ours anymore. Every step drained me. Every moment tested the limits of my strength. At one point, I saw a small roadside shop. There were 2 plastic chairs and a table in front. I thought maybe we could sit there for just a moment, catch our breath, let the kids rest. But as soon as we sat down, the shopkeeper stormed over and said, "Hey, move along. You can't sit here." I pleaded with him, "Please, sir, your shop is so big. Can't you spare even a little food? My kids haven't eaten since morning." But he waved me off. "Nothing here for you. Go." I stood up, holding back the shame, and walked away. He didn't even let my children rest for 5 minutes. As the day turned into evening, I made a silent vow I wouldn't ask anyone for help anymore. I couldn't afford to keep getting rejected. I had to be strong, for my kids. Even if the whole world turned against me, I'd stand on my own feet. That day, I truly learned the hardest lesson. When life gets tough, people reveal who they really are. The ones you believed would always be there for you, they're the first to shut you out. The heat was getting unbearable. My head was spinning. I found a bench on the sidewalk and sat down with my kids. My son leaned into me, tired, and my daughter was asleep on my lap. They were both starving. Then I saw a street vendor across the road selling snacks. The smell of fried food, samosas and fritters, hit us, and my daughter opened her eyes. She tugged at my sleeve and whispered, "Mom, can you please get us something to eat? I'm really hungry." Her little voice shattered me. The hope in her eyes made my heart ache. I checked my purse. I had around 50 rupees, just a little over $50. I walked over to the vendor and quietly asked what I could get. He gave me 3 samosas for 30 and some fritters for 20. I was relieved. At least tonight, my babies wouldn't go to bed hungry. As I returned to the bench and handed them the food, they began eating like they hadn't eaten in days. And maybe they hadn't. Watching them eat so hungrily, I only took a couple of bites for myself. "This is for you," I told them gently. "Eat until your bellies are full." I didn't know how I would feed them tomorrow. I didn't know where the next meal would come from. But right now, this moment, the small smiles on their faces gave me just enough strength to keep going. The night crept in. Shops began to close. Lights dimmed. Families were heading home. And we were still sitting there, on that same bench, alone. After a while, a police van pulled up near where we were sitting. A police officer stepped out and walked toward us. Without any kindness in his tone, he said, "Ma'am, you can't sit here. Get up and move along." I stood up quickly and pleaded, "Sir, please, just let us stay here for one night. We'll be gone by morning. I promise." But he shook his head. "Nope. If I let you stay, then I'll have to let everyone stay, and this street will turn into a shelter. Come on now, move." I had no choice. I picked up my little daughter and held my son's hand, and once again, I started walking. The road was empty and quiet. Each step felt heavier than the last. It was like my feet didn't want to move, but I forced them to, for my children's sake. Far ahead, I saw a group of laborers sitting in a corner. I thought maybe we could sit nearby for a bit, just to rest in the shade. I quietly sat in one corner with the kids. The workers glanced at us but didn't say anything, just went back to their conversations. One old man, kind-hearted, pulled out an old sheet from his bag and tossed it toward us. "Here, sis," he said. "The ground's cold. Let your kids rest on this." I looked at him and whispered, "Thank you." I laid the sheet down and gently helped my children lie on it. For a moment, it felt like we had a tiny bit of comfort. After some time, a woman arrived with a little child of her own. Her clothes were torn, but her eyes had a strange, quiet strength. She sat beside me and asked gently, "You're new around here, huh?" I nodded. She said, "I get it. I'm just like you. No one to turn to. No home. I sleep wherever there's room on the sidewalk." She reached into her bag and pulled out 2 pieces of bread and a small container with what looked like some leftover veggies. "Here," she said, handing it to me, "take this. You must be starving." I tried to refuse, but she insisted. "Please." I begged for it. I know what it's like to go hungry with kids. I accepted her food with shaky hands and tears in my eyes. I realized then that people who've been through pain are the first ones to show kindness. She didn't judge me, she helped me, because she understood. That night, as my kids slept, I stayed awake. My heart was full of fear and helplessness. Dogs started barking nearby, and my kids jumped up in fright and clung to me. I waved my hand to shoo the dogs away. A man nearby warned, "Lady, when you live on the streets, stray dogs are your worst enemy. Keep your guard up." Morning came, and nothing had changed. But something inside me had. I made a decision. I wouldn't feel ashamed anymore. If I had to beg to feed my kids, then so be it. I'd knock on every door if I had to. Let people insult me, I wouldn't let my children go hungry again. I got them ready. I tied up my daughter's hair and dusted off my son's clothes the best I could. Then I walked with them to the marketplace. I figured, with so many people around, maybe someone would notice our situation and help. I sat the kids down in a corner and slowly stepped into the crowd. I didn't look anyone in the eye. My hands trembled as I reached out to strangers. Some ignored me completely. Some dropped a few coins in my hand, 50 cents, maybe $1. And then one woman looked me up and down and said loudly, "Really? A woman like you, clearly educated, and you're out here begging? Why don't you get a job? Some people just don't want to work anymore." I didn't respond. I didn't even flinch. My heart had toughened by now. I had cried all the tears I had. Now, nothing they said could hurt me more than life already had. By evening, I had collected just enough to buy food for 2 small meals. My children ate until their little stomachs were full, and when they looked up at me with tired but smiling faces, all my pain, all my exhaustion, faded away. That moment made everything worth it. And so, this became my daily routine. Every day, I'd walk with the kids to the market, sit in the same corner, and stretch out my hand. The shopkeepers and regulars started to recognize me. Some smiled out of pity. Some looked away. Some still mocked me. But I had stopped caring. My children's survival was more important than my pride. One hot afternoon, the sun blazed above our heads. My daughter tugged at my sleeve and said, "Mommy, I'm really thirsty." I looked around desperately, searching for water. That's when I spotted a small cart nearby, a vendor selling bottled water, sodas, and lemonade. I reached into the little cloth bag where I kept the coins I'd collected from the day. Just a few were left, but it was enough. I quietly walked over and bought a small bottle of water. My kids grabbed it and drank like they hadn't had a drop in days. There was a tiny roadside diner near the market. Sometimes, the workers would hand me whatever leftover food they had at the end of the day. I was truly thankful for that kindness, no matter how small. But one day, the owner called me over. His voice was cold. "Hey, this is a business place," he said. "Customers don't like seeing people like you hanging around. Please leave." I folded my hands and begged, "Sir, I don't bother anyone. I just sit quietly in the corner." He didn't even look at me. "I'm warning you, leave now, or I'll call the cops." Without saying another word, I picked up my kids and walked away to the other side of the market. Not everyone has the heart to show compassion. Some people just don't want the poor near them, like we're a stain they want to wash away. Another day, a wealthy woman and her son passed by. Her little boy handed me a coin, and his fingers accidentally brushed against mine. She immediately scolded him. "How many times have I told you? Give them money from a distance. They're dirty people. You'll catch some disease." Her words cut deep. Is that what we were now? A disease? Just because we were poor? Still, I stayed silent. Another day, I wandered into the vegetable market. I was too embarrassed to ask anyone for help, but a vendor saw me and said, "Hey, there are some cucumbers left. Take them home for your kids." I felt a bit of joy in my heart until I opened the bag. They were all spoiled. Still, we were so hungry that we peeled them carefully, picked out the parts that were still okay, and ate those. We threw the rest away. Even if it was garbage to others, it was a blessing to us. Day after day passed like this. Winter started creeping in, and the nights turned colder. The kids began falling sick, cough, fever, weakness. I wanted to take them to a doctor, but how could I? I didn't even have money for bread, let alone medicine. Some days gave me a tiny spark of hope. Others felt like they were built from despair. But I had made up my mind, no matter how hard things got, I'd never let my children sleep on an empty stomach. By now, I had spent so many days sitting near that marketplace that I could read people's faces in seconds. I could tell who felt pity, who judged me, and who looked at me like I was part of the scenery. Still, every morning, I went back with hope. Maybe today, something would change. Maybe today, a miracle would happen. One evening, after the market closed, I gathered the kids and started walking. The streets were empty, and the cold hit hard. Sleeping outside was getting impossible. My daughter had a high fever. Her tiny body was burning. She'd hiccup softly in her sleep, and her hands would shiver in mine. As we wandered, I noticed a broken-down old shop, its door half-hanging, trash everywhere. But it had 4 walls and a roof. To us, that was enough. I stepped inside, cleared a small patch of space using my torn scarf, and laid down some old cardboard pieces that were scattered in the corner. I sat down, holding my daughter in my lap, while my son curled up beside me. Both kids were exhausted. I stroked their heads and wrapped them in what was left of my scarf, trying to keep them warm. It wasn't enough, not even close. I stayed awake the whole night, holding my daughter. Her fever wouldn't break. No medicine, no help. Just my arms and whispered prayers. I thought about walking her to a hospital and sitting outside all night, but I knew the truth. Without money, no one would let us through the door. By morning, my son woke up crying, "Mommy, I'm hungry." I opened my bag. It was completely empty. Whatever little money I'd gathered the day before, I had spent it all on food last night. There was nothing left now. I pulled him close and softly whispered, "Sweetheart, I promise you, you'll get something yummy real soon." His eyes lit up with hope, but he didn't know I was just trying to comfort him. My heart was breaking, but I had already made up my mind. I would find a way. I didn't know how, but I would. Because I had to. I left my kids sitting in that corner and went around the neighborhood, checking shops, restaurants, anywhere I could find someone willing to help. I didn't ask for money. I asked for work, but every place gave me the same answer. We need a cleaner, they'd say, but not someone like you. At least look presentable. You're filthy. Your clothes are a mess. No one will let you into their home, let alone hire you. I kept walking, knocking on doors with tear-filled eyes. My daughter still had a fever. Her little body felt like it was burning up. A voice in my head kept whispering the same thing over and over, just give up. But I couldn't. I had no choice but to stay strong. For them. As the sun grew harsher, I went back to the market, sat in a sunny spot, and began begging again. That day, a kind older man stopped and handed me a 500 rupee bill. Others dropped in coins, but that note felt like a miracle. I didn't waste a second. I rushed to the nearest restaurant and bought hot food. When I brought it back to my kids and opened the packet in front of them, their eyes sparkled like I had just placed treasure in their tiny hands. They grabbed the food eagerly, giggling, smiling, feeding me bites between their own. I forgot my hunger just watching them eat. That moment filled my empty heart. And so, crying some days, surviving others, we somehow moved forward. I kept praying each day would be a little better than the last. There was a vendor in the vegetable market who sometimes gave me whatever leftovers were still in his cart, overripe tomatoes, half-rotten carrots, bruised cucumbers. Most were inedible, but we'd dig through them, pull out a few decent ones, and make a meal. I was always grateful. My children never complained. Whatever we got, they ate it with joy. But whenever I sat by the roadside, I'd notice them looking at the passers-by with longing. Especially when they saw kids their age riding in fancy cars. I'd quickly change the subject and say, hey, look at that car. One day, we'll ride in a big car just like that, too. I tried to paint hope over their sadness. But my daughter's health was slipping. Day by day, she got weaker. One afternoon, she suddenly collapsed. Panic took over. I picked her up in my arms and ran to the nearby pharmacy. The pharmacist looked at her pale, burning face and said, she needs real treatment. And 4 drip, at least. But here, take this medicine for now. I nodded, then softly said, sir, I don't have money. Please, have mercy. I'm begging you, she's my daughter. If you help me, I'll never forget your kindness. He looked at me for a moment, sighed, and then handed over the medicine. Take it. Go. With tears in my eyes, I thanked him and ran back to my daughter. I found a water tap nearby, filled a bottle, and somehow managed to give her the medicine. That night, I barely slept. By morning, she looked a little better, but so weak. I made a vow right then, I wouldn't drag my kids from street to street anymore. I had to do better, but I still didn't know how. I had managed to save a little money, though not much. I sat with them in front of a small, newly opened shop. The shopkeeper hadn't asked us to leave, yet. I kept telling my kids to stay quiet, so we wouldn't get thrown out. But deep down, I knew, in a few days, even this man would ask us to go. Then one afternoon, a shiny black car pulled up in front of that shop. The door opened, and a man stepped out. My breath caught. That face. I had seen it in dreams, prayed every night to see it in real life, Mark. It looked exactly like my husband. The same eyes, the same walk. But his clothes, his watch, the way he carried himself, he looked rich now. Important. I couldn't believe my eyes. My heart started pounding. I whispered to my kids, sit here. Stay still. Then I stood up and followed the man, walking faster and faster until I was close enough. Mark! I called out, my voice shaking. He turned and looked at me, but there was no recognition in his eyes. Just confusion. He frowned and said sharply, can't you watch where you're going? My heart dropped. I stood frozen, then said in a trembling voice, I'm your wife. Julia. He looked stunned for a moment and replied, what the hell are you talking about? I'm not Mark. My name's Jason. I looked straight into his eyes, hoping to find some piece of the man I once knew, some memory hidden deep inside. I pointed toward my children sitting on the ground and said, look, those kids, they're yours. He didn't stop. He just turned toward his car and muttered, "Go away. Don't make a scene." I followed behind him, calling out his name. I shouted. I begged. I cried. But he didn't even glance back. It was like I didn't exist. People nearby started whispering, "She's lost her mind." I stood there frozen, watching his car disappear into the distance. He was gone, but my heart, it was still stuck in that moment, still waiting. I walked back to my children. My eyes, my spirit, both shattered. I looked at them and wondered how much more we would have to endure. The next day, I couldn't sit still. Something inside me was pulling me back to that same place. A hope I couldn't explain. Maybe he'd return. Maybe I'd find a clue, anything. And then, it happened. That same car rolled back onto the street. My heart started racing. I stood up quickly and moved closer to the sidewalk. He stepped out of the car again. This time, his eyes met mine for a second longer. I rushed to him. "Mark, please, just listen to me, just for a moment." But he raised his voice and snapped, "How many times do I have to tell you? I don't know you. Leave me alone." I couldn't stop myself. I grabbed his arm and pleaded, "Then why do your eyes look just like his? Why does your voice feel so familiar?" He pulled his arm away, stepped back, and yelled, "You're insane. Stop following me." He got in the car and sped away. I stood there, crying. Again. My heart kept asking the same question. If he's not my husband, then why does every part of him feel so real? Why do I keep running into him over and over again? Days passed. He didn't return. But I did. Every single day. I kept coming back to that same spot, begging, waiting, hoping. Then one day, another expensive car pulled up. I stared at the man who stepped out. That face. That voice. That posture. It was him. My breath caught. My heart was screaming his name before my lips could even speak. But he still denied it. Every time. Still. I couldn't let go. That day, I brought my children with me. I stood directly in front of him. My voice trembled, but my heart stood strong. "Mark," I said, "just look into my eyes. The truth is still in there. You know it is." His face hardened. "I've told you, I'm not Mark. My name is Jason. Please, leave me alone and have some self-respect." I folded my hands, tears in my eyes. "If you're not him, then why does every part of me feel like you are? Why does my soul recognize you?" His face changed. The anger faded. His eyes looked lost, like he was searching for something. I stepped closer. "Please," I whispered, "just try to remember. Please. Try to reach into the past. We were married. And these children, Lily and Ethan, they're ours. Just close your eyes and listen to your heart." He hesitated, then shut his eyes. The world stood still. And then, he whispered, "Julia." My breath stopped. I said softly, "Yes. I'm your Julia." He opened his eyes, and for the first time, I saw recognition in them. He spoke slowly. I think I remember something. I had an accident. I was bleeding everywhere." He paused, confused, struggling. I reached out gently and said, "Yes, you had gone to New York. You had an accident there." He held his head in pain. "My head hurts, badly." Then, still holding his forehead, he said, "Yes. I remember now. I woke up in a hospital. But after that, I wasn't home. I was in some strange mansion. They told me I was their son." He looked at me and began to speak slowly, his voice trembling. I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't even recognize who I was. My face, it was disfigured. My eyes couldn't open properly. He paused, took a deep breath, and continued. "There was a boy who worked with me in New York. We were in the same accident. His injuries were worse, his face was completely destroyed. He didn't survive, but I did. When his family came to the hospital, they thought I was him. I had lost my memory. I didn't know who I was. And they had just lost their son. So they told me I was theirs. I stayed with them. They took me in. Once I began to recover, they accepted me fully. And I forgot everything. Tears ran down his cheeks as he said, "Julia, I forgot you." In that moment, he pulled me into a tight hug. He held me like he never wanted to let go. He cried deep, heavy sobs, and then looked at our children and pulled them into his arms too. They began crying as well, tears of confusion, relief, love. For the first time in so long, they felt their father's arms around them. He cried out, "I forgot my family. I forgot my children." There we were, in the middle of the street, hugging each other, crying together like the rest of the world didn't exist. He looked into my eyes and said, "Julia, I'm so sorry. I can't imagine what you went through while I was gone. I didn't remember anything. I didn't know." Softly, I replied, "I never blamed you. I just kept praying for your return. And today, God brought you back to us." He held our children again and said, "These are my babies. I love them with all my heart. And I promise you, never again will they suffer like this. Never again." Later, he took us to a beautiful hotel in his luxury car. That night, for the first time in what felt like forever, we slept on soft beds and ate hot, delicious food. It felt unreal, like a dream we'd waited so long for. Both children fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. All night, Mark kept watching over us. He sat beside me, gently stroking my hair and whispering, "Julia, I don't deserve you. I feel ashamed you had to go through all of this alone. But how? How did it happen? Why were you out on the streets?" Through tears, I told him everything. Every painful moment. Every door that shut in our faces. Every cruel word. Every night spent under the open sky. By the time I finished, his face was filled with anger for all those who had hurt us. The next morning, he bought us new clothes, clean, warm, beautiful clothes. He made sure we ate until our stomachs were full. Then, holding my hand tightly, he said, "We're going back." We drove to his parents' house. He knocked on the door. His father opened it, and the moment he saw him, he cried out, "My son. Mark! Oh my God, he's alive." The house erupted. His mother, sister, and brother all came running. They reached out to hug him. But Mark stepped back, holding up his hand. "You think you're my family?" he said, voice sharp. "What right do you have to hug me now? I don't even recognize you anymore. You threw my wife and children out like they were trash. You let them starve. You blamed them for my death. I will never forgive you," he said. "You treated them like strangers. You made them beg in the streets." He turned to me and held my hand. "From now on, I want no connection with people who never accepted the most important part of my life, my family. If you couldn't love Julia and the kids, you don't get to call yourself my family. As far as I'm concerned, I died in that accident. The son you lost is still gone." We turned to walk away. That's when his mother collapsed to her knees and cried out, "Son, please," we said those things out of anger. "We didn't know. We thought you were gone forever." My husband turned back and looked at his mother with tears in his eyes, but his voice was firm. "You believed I was dead, and that's the moment you let go of everything that truly mattered. The day you threw Julia and our kids out of the house, that was the day you decided we were no longer your family. If you could abandon them just like that, then I can walk away too." They were stunned, ashamed. His father tried to hold his hand. His mother kept begging him to stay. But Mark didn't even look back. He broke all ties that day with the people who failed us when we needed them the most. Then we went to my maternal home. Mark stood tall, facing my brother and sister-in-law, and said, "From this moment on, we have no relationship, because when my wife came to you broken and helpless, you refused her shelter. This house, she was born here. It belongs to her just as much as it belongs to you." My sister-in-law tried to defend herself. "We didn't know you were alive," she said. "If we had known, we would have helped." But my husband wasn't moved. "That doesn't matter anymore. I'm here now, and I'll protect my wife and children. We don't need anyone else." And that was it. From that day, he held my hand tighter and never let go. He took us to a large, beautiful house. As we walked in, he said, "This is ours. I bought it when I came back from New York. We'll live here now, together." Our children looked around with wide, sparkling eyes. They laughed, ran from room to room, touching everything, almost like they couldn't believe it was real. For them, it was like entering a fairy tale. I broke into tears. I raised my eyes to the sky and whispered, "Thank you, God. You returned my husband, you returned our happiness." Mark had recovered all of his memory by now. But even today, he's still haunted by what we went through. He often says he can't forgive himself for the pain we endured. And I've learned a deep truth. Nothing in life stays the same. Dark days come and go. Today, my husband is wealthy. But back then, we had nothing and no one. When his family heard about his success, they tried to reach out. They begged for forgiveness. But he never forgave them. For what Julia and the kids went through, he told them, "I can never forget, and I'll never forgive." I once believed in people. I trusted too easily. But life showed me the truth. You don't really know anyone until your world falls apart. When times are good, everyone smiles with you. But when your life burns to the ground, no one comes to help you gather the ashes. I've become quieter, distant. Now I know it's better to stay away, even when things are good, because bad times never knock before they enter. And when they do, people vanish on their own. You don't need to push them away, they walk away themselves. So no, I don't feel the need to go back to anyone. If you connected with our story today, please like the video and share it with someone who needs hope. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because we're here to bring you more stories that touch your heart. Thank you for being here.